video is essentially a continuation of the video that I did a few days ago, where I was looking at statements or parts from statements made by Maddie's teachers. So in this video I've got excerpts from a few more of Maddie's teachers, and the goal of this video is not to try and make the teachers look bad or allocate blame or anything like that, but to highlight where things could be changed in the education system that would benefit students. It's in some ways what you would consider creating student-focused schools. A lot of education places are curriculum-focused. Essentially what I mean by that is that the number one priority in schools that are curriculum focused is about making sure that they are focusing on getting the curriculum out there in the classroom, that every lesson is about covering the curriculum that is needed to be covered, and that the needs of the students are secondary to that. Whereas in an environment that is student-centred, the needs of the students become a priority, and that means that basically you're making sure that whatever it is that your students need is provided to them. And by extension, that actually allows all students access to the curriculum, because you are looking at their individual needs and you are catering to those individual needs. And of course, as part of that, it comes down to learning to recognise signs of trauma in children and learning how to respond to that. Learning how to recognise when children are struggling and how to, as a community, attend to the needs of those children. One of the things which stood out to me a lot, and I mentioned this in my previous video, is that all these teachers were essentially working in isolation. There appears to have been no communication over Maddie's learning, or the fact that she was pretty much failing, or over her emotional or psychological needs. None of that conversation was happening, and this is something that needs to be done better in schools. Just informal conversations between teachers. Even if it is just 5 minutes at the end of a staff meeting, when teachers can just bring up a child that they are seeing issues with and discuss that child as a whole staff thing. You know, just a few minutes spent saying, well, now when Maddie's in my class, she's on F, she's not concentrating, she's sleeping a lot of the time, or, well, when she's in my class, she heads off to the nurse a lot of the time. These things are important. The communication between all teachers will show a pattern, and that's when you start being able to make a difference for a child. This wasn't happening for Maddie, and it could have made a huge difference. So let's jump in and look at these interviews, and I'll explain along the way my rationale behind all this and why I've taken particular excerpts and what I think could have been done differently.
Can you maybe tell me, I guess, tell me a little bit about her, what's she like?
She's very quiet, reserved. She looks sad quite often.
Okay.
Even if they on your assignment, like to redirect her within a very short amount of time, she's lost focus again. She'll have her head down. She's often in the clinic, whether she was in my 3rd period or currently in my 6th period. She's oftentimes in the clinic.
Okay. And what's that for, usually?
Either she's not feeling well or she has anxiety.
Okay.
Now, even without asking about grades, you know that when you hear that kind of description, that that child is definitely flunking that class. She's quiet, she's sad, she often has her head down, she loses focus in a short amount of time, and she is often needing to go to the clinic claiming that she is unwell or anxious. So there need to be strategies put in place when a child is suffering with this kind of thing. This teacher was simply letting it continue that way. She could have made a huge difference for Maddie. Now, she says at one stage that she contacted Jen. I think I've kept that in the video here, but it needed to be more than that. Now, if you have a student in your class who is frequently needing to go to the clinic because she feels unwell or she's anxious, and you're also finding that she cannot focus when she's in your class, that's huge. That to me says when you get your class settled, or when you get your class started on a task, as you're getting them settled, you should focus in on that student and spend a bit of time sitting down and working with them one-on-one to help them become engaged in their task. Now, I also would question what the behaviour level was like in that class. It was a end of day class, so it could have been quite ratty. Was it a noisy classroom? Were there children being disruptive? Because for a child like Maddie, that would have made it impossible for her to focus. And you need to recognise these things. Teachers need to get better at recognising when their classroom environment is actually not a good environment for a student. So if you have a student who you observe as a quiet student and they are frequently needing to leave your class to go to the clinic because they claim they feel sick or they feel anxious, you need to think about what they're actually telling you there. And what she's telling her there is, I can't cope with being in this environment. For some reason, that classroom was not a safe zone for Maddie. What should teachers do in these sort of situations? They should be trying to find a quiet workspace for that child. One example, a teacher with a child in her class who had been known to leave the class frequently because of anxiety issues, because she was feeling ill. That teacher managed to set up a corner that was essentially separated from the rest of the room. There was a half height wall, so it wasn't a separate room, and it had previously been like an area for using computers. That particular teacher instead brought the computers onto the other side of the wall and set up a quiet space on the other side of that wall. It actually created a barrier, and even though it was sitting down, it was head height, the kids could still look over the wall if they wanted to. It was a barrier of sorts that created a safe zone for children who weren't coping in class. Something like that is really easy to do. You can set up, I've heard of teachers who set up little tents in their classroom with cushions inside them, and that can be a quiet working space for students. Other teachers who've made use of empty offices next to their classrooms where the child can be in there with the door ajar so the teacher can still check on them frequently, and the child can be in there with a trusted friend doing their work, and all of a sudden this child is succeeding. But by just ignoring that a child is not coping in your class, and when they approach you to say, I can't cope, I need to go to the nurse because I feel sick or I'm anxious, nothing's ever going to change for that child. Not only that, if there are things going on in that child's world, that child's never going to trust you to confide in you if there is something that maybe that child needs an adult to be able to confide in. So, what this teacher has described to me is a classroom that was not a safe zone for Maddie. It should become second nature for any teacher if a child is failing in their class, no matter how it is. They should be assessing the classroom environment, they should be assessing the situational environment, and looking at ways that they can make an environment where that child can achieve success.
When you say she's not feeling well, what does that mean? Did she tell you ever?
She's like, I'm not feeling good. Can I go to the nurse?
Did she describe it at all? Like, my stomach's hurting, my head's hurting, I'm feeling sad, anxious?
I just know that she has anxiety.
Okay.
So I just allow her to go to the nurse and see the nurse.
And is that common in other periods too that you know of? I don't know if y'all ever talk about it.
I don't know about the other periods, but it stayed about the same as far as third period versus sixth period.
Okay.
Okay, this teacher was maintaining a status quo. This child was obviously not coping in her class, and there are two things that she could have done here. First of all, it's okay to push back a little bit. If a child is so frequently saying that they need to leave your class to go to see the nurse because they feel sick or they feel anxious, don't simply accept it as fact, because it starts to become habit, and the child doesn't start to learn coping strategies. So instead, you delve a little bit. Okay, can you tell me why you feel the need to go to the nurse? And if it's, and then, they might say, I've got a bellyache. And then you might start to see patterns. If that child's telling you they've got a bellyache once a week or once every other week, there's something going on there. And that's when you need to have conversations with them about, is it something in here that's making you feel that you have a bellyache? Or if they're just saying, I feel anxious, is it something about being in this classroom that makes you feel anxious? What can we do to make it easier for you to stay in class? And that should be the goal. The goal should be developing strategies to enable that child to stay in class. It could be that the child just really wants to avoid working in that class for some reason, in which case you need to figure out why that is and how you can help them to achieve success in that classroom so they don't feel the need to exit the room. If it is a behaviour issue, then you need to discover what's going on there. Is it because there's another child near them that's upsetting them? Is it because you have a noisy classroom? It shouldn't be something that is just simply accepted. Oh, I just let her go because I know that she gets anxious. That's not helping the child at all. And yes, sometimes children do need an exit strategy for when they become anxious. But that's something that you need to work on with a counsellor, with other staff, so that the child still has the opportunity to achieve success in the classroom. Because the more that the child misses of the class, the less likely that child is going to be able to achieve success, and the more often they're going to want to exit the class, and it starts to become a really bad cycle. And going back to what I said at the start of this video, the police officer or whoever it was, the detective, asked her, have you discussed this? Is this happening in other classes? She doesn't know it's happening in other classes. She just knows it was happening in her third period class and her sixth period class after Maddie changed classes. If you've got a child exiting your class that much, that should be a conversation that is had with other teachers within the school. It also should be a conversation that is had with support staff, because something needs to be put in place to support that child so that she can achieve success in that classroom. In terms of what Maddie was going through in her private life, by essentially going, oh, I accept that this child has anxiety issues, I'm just going to, if she comes to me and says, can I go to the nurse, just say, yeah. Essentially, you are giving the message that you're disinterested in that child. Yeah, okay, go to the nurse. You're not concerned at all about what is upsetting them, what is causing them to need to go to the nurse. Meaning that this child, you're closing a door on this child. It's another adult that is inaccessible to this child. And just, like I said, a little bit of pushback. Are you sure you need to go to the nurse? Do you want to just have a little bit of quiet time? Or do you want to just go wash your face and come back and see if that helps? You know, trying to introduce strategies showing that you are interested in that child. And then maybe down the track that child may actually feel comfortable enough to actually trust you and tell you that things aren't right in their world. Certainly, at the very least, there should have been conversations with other teachers, and red flags should have been raised. We're hearing all these teachers saying different things about how Maddie wasn't coping in their class, and yet each of them are operating on their own. There's been no communication and no patterns have been established. There could have been a difference made for Maddie if only communication was happening.
Is she ever absent from school?
She is. Mm-hmm. Without looking at my attendance sheets, I can't tell you how frequent it is.
Would you describe her just off the top of your head as like frequently absent, or is it just not frequent enough for you to notice and call it something?
Because she's in the clinic so much and she goes home, she's missing my class a lot.
Got it.
So whether she's gone home or she's still in the clinic, she does miss my class a lot.
Okay, again, that is someone simply accepting, well, that's the way it is. I don't really care, essentially. She's saying that Maddie is missing her class a lot, but she's not digging enough to find out, is it because Maddie is not at school on particular days and she has a lot of absences? Is it because she's going home early? And if so, why is she going home early? Or is it because she's going to the nurse? This is important. And if a child is missing your class that much, you should be finding out why and finding out precisely where that child is when they miss your class. Poor Maddie, it feels like nobody cared enough to really ask the right questions about what was going on in Maddie's world.
Is she a new student here?
I am unsure.
Okay, that's fine. Have you noticed any changes in her behavior?
I have.
Okay, how so?
On January 22nd, with her being moved, and the only reason why I know this is because I was looking at my talking points. And on January 22nd, I met through talking points and said that, explained to her that she had been moved to my sixth period, and that I'm noticing she's more tired, more like withdrawn in my sixth period class. Like she's lost more focus than usual. And I just forgot. You're just seeing her in her natural state. I forgot to give her her medicine.
More negativity from Jen. Oh, that's just her natural state. And then I forgot to give her her medicine. So it seems to me that Jen really didn't give a rat's ass about how Maddie was coping at school. And these teachers just accepted that. Now, the communication was done through Talking Points, which is that app that they use to communicate. And to me, that is inadequate. And I've said this with another one of the teachers. If a child is having that much difficulty in your class, then you should be organising to have the parent come in to the school and sit down face to face with you so you can have a conversation with them. How can we help your child to achieve success in this class? Because right now your child is failing. If they won't come in and do a face-to-face talk, at least pick up the phone and have a real conversation. Yes, it is super convenient to be able to drop an email just quickly or leave a note in an app, but that only achieves so much. It needs to be a full-on conversation with children like this. And then if there are things that concern you, then you need to discuss them with other staff in the school. But to simply just accept the parents saying, well, that's just her natural state, and I forgot to give her her medications. What does that achieve for the child? If you were concerned enough to contact the parent about it, and the parent has essentially brushed it off, you need to follow through. You can't just then brush it off yourself and go, parent doesn't care, so why should I? Because that is essentially what has happened here.
So she got moved into your sixth period class?
Correct.
Where was she moved from?
So she was in so there was a problem with chorus.
Oh, okay.
And so the only other period that particular chorus that she was in was third period, so they swapped third and sixth. So she's now in chorus third period and me sixth period, and it
Gotcha.
was different.
So she was just moved for timing reasons, for scheduling reasons.
Right.
Gotcha, but there was nothing happening in chorus.
I don't.
That you know of.
I just know that there was an issue with something happening in chorus with students.
Gotcha. So there was some sort of issue in chorus.
Correct.
So they switched her around so she'd be in your sixth period.
Correct.
Got it. And I guess there's different students in that other period of chorus.
Correct.
Gotcha.
If a child's been switched into your class because of issues with other students in another class, you should be actually delving a bit further into that, because that may actually give you clues as to why that student is not coping in your class at that point in time. There was no real conversation had here clearly as to why Maddie so much needed to change classes here. She was simply changed into this later class. She was failing this later class. She was leaving frequently to go to the nurse, and yet no conversations were had about what was going on here with this child. To me, what you're seeing here is signs that things were very wrong in this child's world. And yet, now it was a good thing, changing classes, recognising that it was a problem and changing classes. But that's still only a band-aid issue. There was nobody who seemed to really give a damn about why it was that Maddie wasn't coping at school. No one was asking the hard questions. And look what they were missing.
And so you noticed that her behavior was a lot different from third to sixth period. She was more withdrawn, more tired. That's just how she more often is. Like, that's her natural kind of.
So that particular day when I messaged her, she's like, that's something to the effect of, that's her, you're seeing her in her natural state. I forgot to give her ADHD meds or something like that.
What about her grades? How have they been?
So all year they've been DF.
Okay.
And in the past, like, she wouldn't do all of her assignments, but like every couple of assignments she would do one. But lately, since moving into my sixth period, she hasn't. There might be one or two assignments that she completed since moving into my sixth period till now.
Have you talked to her about it, or?
I do. I meet with her weekly. Like, hey, how's your assignments going? She's like, I'm working on them.
Okay.
But that's like the extent of it.
She just says she's working on it.
Now, if you're saying to a child on every week, how's your assignments going? And you're going, I'm working on it, and you're seeing no progress, you're not doing the right thing, are you? You're repeating a behaviour that is unsuccessful. What should be happening here? Several things. First of all, there's been no discussion here about what is contained in Maddie's IEP, her individual education plan. But there should be something in that IEP in relation to helping her to achieve success with assignments. The thing is, whether it's ADHD or whether it's trauma, this is a child who is suffering from anxiety. This is a child who is exiting the class frequently, meaning that she is having fewer and fewer opportunities to complete her work. She's clearly not completing her work outside of class, and yet the teachers had no communication other than through an app with the parent over any of this, for starters. That should be the first thing that happens, getting the parent in and saying, I'm concerned your child is failing this class. What can we do to help her? But this never happened. But not only that, now let's talk about the way, let's just assume that Maddie did have ADHD right now. Because I think in terms of these assignments, the outcome is the same. If you have a child who is getting further behind in their assignments, and you touch base with them, so to speak, to say, well, how's your assignments going? All you're doing there is raising their anxiety levels. You're just reminding them that they've got all these assignments that need to be done, need to be handed in, and that they've not done that. That's not helping them to get the assignments done. That's not helping them to achieve success. So in the child's mind, they're just going to panic and be like, oh, here we go again. Yeah, I'm working on it. Meaning, no, they're not working on it. They're panicking because they feel like the workload is far too much. The workload is getting bigger and bigger. And because it's getting bigger and bigger, they can't even begin to tackle it. What should be happening here is starting with, okay, let's forget about all these assignments you've got that are due right now, and here's a task from one assignment that I would like you to do for me before the next lesson. One single task. Let the child achieve success. If they can't get the task done before the class, then, as horrible as it sounds, Have them come and work with you, perhaps during their lunch break. It may only take 5 minutes for you to sit down with them and help them complete that task, and then you praise them for it. Send them off to enjoy their lunch, and don't talk about any more of the stuff that needs to be done. Just praise them for what they've achieved. Let them go, and they're going to feel a sense of accomplishment. Not only that, they're going to feel that you actually genuinely care about their success because you've taken time out of your day to sit down with them in a quiet situation to help them complete a task. It's so important with children with ADHD, and trauma children will present the same way. It is so important to help them feel positive about themselves. Let them achieve small successes, and they will lead to the greater successes. If you overwhelm them with the 20 assignments that they haven't done, I can promise you none of those assignments will get done. But if you say, I don't care about these assignments right now, I just care about this one paragraph that I'd like you to do for me. Let's get that done. That's all I want from you right now. They can do it. It's not scary. They achieve it. And then you can use that as leverage. You did so well with this. Now let's use this to do this next thing. But instead, it was just a weekly touching base with Maddie. How's your assignments going? That would have achieved nothing. Certainly nothing that I can see with this teacher was aimed at allowing Maddie any success or trying to build up any sort of relationship with Maddie. This child was on her own.
And in your weekly meetings, I mean, has she ever talked about life at home and mentioned being sad or depressed or... Okay.
No.
Has she ever shown any signs of being depressed?
I mean, with her just... It's hard. It's hard to tell because she was always having anxiety. She was always like putting her head down like she wasn't feeling well. So,
Gotcha. As far as like her state of mind or her mental state in your class, as far as you know, she's just very quiet, but
Correct.
You wouldn't necessarily describe that as like sad or depressed, just withdrawn.
Correct.
That's what it sounds like. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Like having a hard time focusing.
Yeah. But she also has ADHD, right? Or like interaction or involvement with you specifically or any other conversations?
We've had other conversations about her not passing my class and hey, she's missing these assignments.
And what's her, what'd she say to that?
Sometimes she'll respond and sometimes, okay, I'll work with her on it, but...
Okay. It sounds like that's kind of I'm working on it kind of thing, but nothing really definitive.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, I will give this teacher credit for at least contacting Jen and letting her know that her child was failing in her class. Because that's what that part of that conversation was about with the redacted stuff. But when the parent brushes you off like that, then you need to keep trying, choose a different tack. Organise for the parent to come in and meet with you one-on-one. And rather than being brushed off, discuss with the parent strategies for enabling success for their child. Not only that, this teacher has essentially admitted that her only conversations with Maddie were hounding her about work. That's never going to achieve anything. When a child is struggling that much in your class and you can see so many signs that something is not right with that child, you're failing. Full stop, end of story. A teacher should be able to recognise when a child is really struggling and should be able to take the time to try and connect with that child. Like I said, a classic strategy: if a child struggles to get work done in your class, when you set a task for students and you know that that child's going to be off dreaming, staring out the window, or whatever it was that she did, you zone in on that student straight away as soon as students start working. Sit down with them, help them get started on their task, and stay there as long as you need to help them feel that they can do that task. And it doesn't have to be all focused on the work. While you're sitting with them, just small conversations. It doesn't have to be hard hitting, tell me all about your life. But, well, you do get quite tired this time of day. Do you have late nights quite often? Start showing an interest in the child as an individual. This teacher was not doing that by the sounds of it. All she was interested in was in making sure that Maddie got her work done. There were never any attempts to find out what Maddie's world was like. And there needs to be more of that happening. If a child is not achieving success in a classroom, one of the things that can help them to achieve success is to feel like the teacher does actually like them and that the teacher does have an interest in them. Then they're going to want to please their teacher. And if that teacher is willing to sit down with them and help them achieve success, they're going to want to please. Simply hounding them over work achieves nothing, and if that child does have dark secrets at home like Maddie, it sure as hell is not helping them in any way with those.
How would you say your relationship is with her?
Oh, great. I think she likes me as a teacher, and she's a very good, well-behaved student. On the quieter side, she sometimes does her work. I guess, she has we call them sleepy days.
Okay.
Where, she'll come in, just want to do nothing but put her head down and kind of ignore most things, but then, she'll end up doing her work later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I found this teacher really, really interesting. First of all, I think she likes me. This guy is looking at his relationship with the student, and it sounds to me like he is actually doing self-reflection. Is this child happy in the classroom? I think she's happy in the classroom. She seems to like me. So, to me, that's a positive. This guy obviously cares about the relationships that he has with his students enough to make note of that in this interview. I'd also be interested to know what his strategy is when he talks about her sleepy days. Because he says she has the sleepy days, she comes in and she needs to put her head down for a while, but then she ends up getting her work done. There's something that this teacher is doing that is allowing her to feel successful in his classroom. Something that is making her feel motivated to go from that stage of shutdown to then getting her work done. Is it that he is allowing her downtime and then after a certain amount of time encouraging her some way to help her get started on her work? I'm not sure, but there's definitely a positive relationship here in this classroom that was enabling Maddie's success.
Do a lot of kids do that?
Not really.
Okay.
No.
Would you say your relationship is close with her?
As far as teacher-student goes, I would say fairly average. I don't know much about her personal life or anything like that, but I keep academic tabs on her mostly.
Okay.
Yeah. But the typical, hey, how's your weekend? You had fun? I knew she had a birthday party this past weekend, stuff like that. But basic information for the most part.
So there it is, right there. He must be just doing this naturally because he's not recognizing that what he's doing is building the foundations of a relationship with Maddie. He asked her how her weekends were going. He knew that she had a party coming up. So he was showing enough interest in his student to know that surface level information about what was going on in her outside world. And it sounds like because of that, she was achieving greater success in his classroom. Now, unfortunately, her having a sleepy day thing sounds like that was not communicated with other teachers, because if it was, then the pattern would have been seen with that teacher in the sixth period who was also having issues with that. But definitely this teacher sounds like he was doing a lot of the right things there to build a better relationship with his child. And I think he could have been a good resource for other teachers. Had teachers actually decided to communicate with each other over Maddie, then I think he could have given some positive insights to the other teachers that would have allowed them to understand her a bit more and to allow her greater success in the classroom. But not only that, I think that it may have helped with other teachers understanding Maddie, and somehow along the line, that understanding may have led to discovering what was going on in Maddie's world. She just needed to be treated like an individual at that school, not just another student. And because she was barely being treated that way, so far we have one teacher who was treating her that way, and it was a male teacher, which, it's harder for female students to confide in male teachers as well. Maybe over time that relationship could have gotten stronger and she may have shared things with that teacher about what was going on in her world. But certainly to me it seems like this teacher was doing a lot of good things in terms of building a relationship with Maddie that could have made a difference in the long run. But at the same time, he was working in isolation.
Just typical conversations?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys ever have like one-on-one conversations? Was it always like in a group and passing, things like that?
If we ever had one-on-one conversations, it was just about grades and maybe that she wasn't, like, she needed to pull up something or turn in an assignment, but that would not have been more than once, maybe twice.
Okay, so she never confided anything in you? You guys never talked about home life, anything like that?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Okay, I seem to be saying this in nearly every video, but yes, that is my chihuahua snoring in the background. Now, again, we have a teacher here who's saying the main conversations I have with this child is over incomplete work. And here's the thing. Teachers need to be having more conversations with their students about other things to balance that out. Yeah, you need to discuss with a student when their work is incomplete. But to balance that out, you should be building a trust relationship with that student. Now, we know that he was having some conversations with her. How was your weekend? Well, I know that she was having a party over the weekend, that sort of thing. So there was some amount of conversation going on there. But in terms of assignments, I think this would have been a good opportunity, given that Maddie seemed a bit more comfortable with him. It would have been a really good opportunity for conversations around why she was struggling with her assignments and how he could help her to get those in. So there's a lot of missed opportunities here from these teachers. Things that they could have said or done that could have made a difference for Maddie. Even conversations amongst staff that could have highlighted issues that could have then been referred to a counsellor. Things that, when you look at it across the entire school day, could be considered a red flag. So I think, once again, we're going back to the lack of communication amongst staff within that school, meaning that patterns weren't being identified. So there was no red flags seen because it was just like, oh well, this kid's failing in my class, whatever.
No, I was a substitute teacher for my class, but I never actually saw her in person.
Okay. How about changes overall in her behavior?
Actually, I don't know why it's such recent, but not really.
Okay.
She had less sleepy days, I guess, would
Okay.
actually be a thing.
Okay.
It was more so the beginning of the year. But other than that, no changes.
Has she had any signs of depression or suicidal ideations, inclinations?
Nothing with suicide. I know that like fatigue and stuff like that can be a sign of depression, but without anything being confided in me, I never assumed or anything like that. Just
Okay.
she never got any sleep.
Okay. What's her grades like?
They were a little bit rough, and then she brought them up.
Okay.
She'll go through phases of not turning anything in, turning everything in, not turning it in, turning it all in. I would still say probably in the BC range, but I'm not 100% sure right now. I have to pull it up. Yeah, so as we were leaving 7th period, I always say, like, oh, I'll see you guys Monday, and I'm pretty sure she said something along the lines of see you Monday too, but can't be 100% sure.
Maddie's grades were better with this teacher, and it sounds like she was turning in more work, and it sounds like from what he's saying that she was doing better in class. Now we know that things changed for her after Stefan moved out, and he even says, look, she was having less sleepy days. But at the same time, you're not hearing any significant changes from the other teachers. You have this 6th period teacher who's saying she still wasn't getting her work in. So what I take away from this is that this teacher was doing a lot of the right things with Maddie. He was communicating. And even just, alright, see you guys on Monday. That shows that you do have an interest in the students. And it shows that you genuinely care about the students. And the fact that Maddie was starting to show improvement in his class tells me that he was getting through to her. He was building a connection with her. Sadly, there wasn't enough time to build enough of a connection for her to perhaps disclose anything to him that may have been concerning to her. But it sounds like he was genuinely making the effort, and you can see that in her higher grade, her better performance in class. So what's the takeaway here? Once again, it's about communication with the children and communication with the parents. He's another one that has said that he hasn't had any face-to-face communication with Jen. But it sounds like that's something in his mind that is at least considered as a possibility, because he said only through this app. So it sounds like there was possibly a thought in his mind about setting up a meeting with the parent. And when a parent is apathetic like that, communicating via an app or email isn't enough. You need to talk to them face to face. And I realise teachers get busy, but every child should have a chance at success. And when a child is not succeeding, you can discover a lot of things, not just about why they're not succeeding, but potentially about things that aren't quite right in their home life. And had someone actually said, this child is not succeeding at school, I want to set up a face-to-face meeting with the mother, they may have found out some things from Jen that may have prompted further investigation into what was going on in Maddie's world.
How well do you know her?
I thought pretty well. She has been in my class all year round. She's always very sweet, and she struggles a bit. I mean, all my kids are intensive kids, so they're the students who are struggling. She was on my door decorating team.
So she's, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but she's been in your class since fall?
Since the beginning of the year,
Fall
yes,
of 23, okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
She was on my door decorating team. She was actually chosen to be my student of the week from 2 weeks ago for helping us win our door decorating competition with her friends.
Okay.
And she came before school and after school a couple times for that event, which was 1 week.
Okay. So she got student of the week.
Yes.
For the door
Sure. Her
decorating.
certificate's on my desk to give her.
Okay. You said that she came early.
Yes, her and her came with a few other students to help with the door decorating the week of Literacy Week.
How well do you think you knew her? You said you thought you knew her pretty well. Did you guys have like one-on-ones? Like, how
Not
do you...
really any one-on-ones.
Okay.
Like, I didn't even know. Like, I didn't.
Okay.
Like, I thought I knew her. Like, I know my other students, but we've never really had a lot of personal talks.
Okay.
Now, this was one thing that disturbed me, because I gather that this teacher is the support teacher. This is the classroom that Maddie was being sent to for support because of her difficulties. And now the door decorating thing, brilliant idea, and clearly it was a chance for Maddie to achieve success, and there was a certificate for her for achieving that success. But this teacher then turns around and says, well, we never had any really kind of personal conversations. So my question is, was this teacher engaging with those students when they came to do the door decorating before and after school? Because that is the perfect opportunity for informal conversations with the students, especially with them being in a group, because that gives you a chance to really connect with them without it being that intense one-on-one thing. And you can still find out personal information about them, you know, obviously not digging really, really deep, but you can start finding out what makes them tick and having a conversation with that group of kids about things that interest them. So I find it interesting that she's saying, you know, nothing personal, and yet for a week, this child was going to her classroom before and after school with a smaller group of kids. That would have been a perfect time to be working on building a relationship there. So, to me, that is somewhat disturbing. I think this teacher should have been the person that Maddie could have confided in. And yet she's saying, no, well, you know, nothing personal really.
Really, her showing up for door decorating was probably the most that I've had, like, private conversations with her. It was with her other friends there.
Did you ever, you said you never really had like one-on-one conversations with her?
For door decorating, we would chat about certain things.
Okay,
I
so
know
she didn't confide in you or anything?
Not anything like what we learned about last night, nothing like that.
Okay, so she's saying here that she was having conversations during that whole week that she was doing the door decorating. So that's a good thing. So she was actually working on making that connection with Maddie. Of course, don't forget, that's halfway through the school year. So to me, as a support teacher, you should be trying to do activities with those kids that you are supporting from the very start of the year, things that will allow you to make connections, because you just don't know what's going on in these kids' worlds. And if you can make that connection with a child that's struggling, you can make a difference.
They had been talking during, again, I'm not part of this conversation, they were talking about how they had heard Lady Gaga's, oh my God, Want to Take a Ride on My Disco Stick, and they go, Miss DeLuca, did you know what that song was about? So they've had, but they were all acting very, scandalized, shocked by it. So I'm hoping and praying that she has not had that, but I don't. But that's most of my students. They're 12. They're just learning about that kind of thing. They're going through sex ed and science class right now.
You about, like you said, sexual abuse,
No.
Being abused in any other way at home, nothing like that?
No, I didn't even know that. I'd never heard her mention. I don't think I've ever. She came to open house, but I don't think so.
Now, I left that last bit in about the Lady Gaga conversation and about the kids having sex ed at that point in time. Not to say that there should have been any conversations happening there, but it shows that this teacher was at least aware of the things that these kids were reacting to at that particular age, and that she was aware that they were doing sex ed in science. I'm not sure if there could have been anything more from that, but sometimes when those kind of things are going on, if you are kind of one of the more direct teachers to that child, it's worth being aware of any changes in behaviour or any interesting comments said by the child if you are aware that they are going through sex education in another classroom, if it is showing anything that is triggered. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that very well, but I wonder if this teacher was aware of the curriculum, and I wonder if she had noticed any changes in behaviour or any reactions or anything in Maddie that she may have overlooked because she just simply didn't know to look for them. I'm not sure. But the other thing is, the main thing there is actually what came after that, talking about her having an open house for parents and saying that she doesn't think that Jen went to it. To me, says that Jen probably didn't go to it. We know that Jen had anxiety issues, so I'm guessing that something more open like that, that didn't have the structure of just a one-on-one, can we meet? I'd imagine that she would not have attended something like that. But I think when you have a child like Maddie, it is so important that if you have provided something like an open house to give parents an opportunity to come in, and a parent hasn't come in of a child like Maddie, you should be reaching out to them and trying to set up a meeting with that parent one-on-one, or at least trying to have a phone conversation with that parent. But face-to-face is always better. So all these teachers are commenting on not having had any face-to-face interactions with the parent of a child who is really struggling in school. And that is a major concern to me, because they could have picked up on something if they just had a bit more knowledge.
So how are her grades in your class?
Low.
Okay.
She's had a D pretty much every quarter. Kind of like when we are working in class, she's able to, and then she does get extended time. It's the follow through and getting things done that she didn't really do very often.
Okay. Have you seen any real shifts in her behavior?
No.
Okay.
If anything, I would say that it was almost better since like door decorating. Like I felt like she was trying a little bit harder in class.
Okay.
Honestly, I feel like with all of Maddie's teachers, it's been a situation of too little, too late. Again, She's saying Maddie was getting a D in her class, and that it was about follow through. She would work in class, but then she wouldn't follow through outside of class. That should be an immediate reason to be having a one-on-one conversation with the parent about why the child is unable to complete work at home. But it also should be something that makes you look long and hard about what's going on in that child's world. Had all these teachers communicated, they would have seen a pattern here. Now, these latest teachers aren't talking about Maddie heading out of class due to anxiety or feeling unwell or anything. So I think she was coping better in their classes. But at the same time, she still wasn't completing her work. So what could have been done here? There needs to have been conversations amongst teachers over this child. And then things should have been put in motion. There should have been more time put aside for Maddie to talk to the counsellor. Clearly something wasn't right in this child's world. This was more than just ADHD. And to simply brush it off as ADHD, even if it was, you're essentially saying, well, this child doesn't need to succeed in school. We're not going to worry about trying to help her succeed because she's got ADHD, so it doesn't matter. Kids with ADHD can achieve success if they're given the right opportunities to do so. Kids with trauma can achieve success if given the right opportunities to do so. But there was just so much disinterest in Maddie's well-being here. There's patterns that could have been picked up on had there been communication between teachers. And had there been more conversations with the parent, with the school counsellor, perhaps something could have been picked up on that could have made a difference in Maddie's world. Perhaps if teachers understood signs that a child had experienced some sort of trauma and could recognise that when a child is failing that badly at school, that something is definitely not right in their world, perhaps something could have happened before Maddie lost her life. Like I said, this isn't intended as a criticism of teachers. This is about talking about how the system needs to change. Schools need to move towards student-focused education. Maddie was just brushed aside by her teachers. There wasn't any attempt to try and connect with a child who was clearly struggling. There wasn't any attempt to try and help that child achieve success. Maddie's failing her assignments? No worries, we'll just remind her that she's failing her assignments. We won't try and put anything in place to help her achieve success there. Should we contact the mother? We'll just do it in the app. We won't get the mother in and have a one-on-one conversation. These are missed opportunities that could have given a much better picture of what was going on in Maddie's world. So, thanks for listening. If you're new, please subscribe. Please hit the like button and leave a comment below. What are your thoughts on the things I've discussed here? Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.